I sort of solved my camera problem. I got it mounted on there now. Didn't like what I had to do. Don't love it. The camera is out in the open. That's not the way this is supposed to be. That camera is supposed to be down in here where even this lens is almost protected by this carbon fiber. Could even be installed down here. But I couldn't do that, not with what I had. I did use the camera mount that came with the Runcam Phoenix 2 JB edition. The outside edges, as you can see, are just way too wide for the whole thing to go inside there. There's two little arms on it that are a little less wide than the place where these three screw holes can be screwed in. And I put some M2 screws through that with washers and nuts on the back and fixed this mount to the frame, and of course the camera sticks in that mount. Now then, I'm holding this top plate because look how much tension that's under. Oops, it's coming out from the bottom. Well, you can see it here probably when this comes loose. To be able to put these two little dog ears in where they're supposed to be, you'll notice that really isn't just put the dog ears in. I've got to physically pull them towards each other. It's much narrower in the back here than it is in the front. It's not bad, but that's the reason this camera can't go inside this area where, in my humble opinion, it was meant to be. But that does sort of get me flying. I don't like it. Not the most elegant solution, in my humble opinion. Oops. Yep. And to get this leg in also requires a little, ouch, pinch myself, good, between the frame parts as it popped in. So there that is. Don't like it, don't hate it, kind of medium with it. Okay, I'm rendering a video, maybe get some help before the motors arrive, or I think I've got most of it all figured out. It's kind of flailing around earlier. So we're waiting on the motors. We'll be soldering up the ESCs. Then I've got the TBS Unify Pro staged up here. Got the wires cut away from the connector that I won't be using. I'll be using voltage, ground, video, and smart audio. That'll be all for that. That's ready to solder on. These are the wires for the GPS. They're all ready to solder on. That's just the thing for the GPS, so I know what that wire is for. There's the flight controller. There's the ESC wires with the connector for the flight controller, 8 pins, that these pins here will go into here in a second. This is the RC receiver with the wires for the that came with it. I need 6. It comes with a black and a red and a yellow and a white, and then another black and red for the other 2. Come on, guys. Give me a blue and a green, not another black and a red. But I'll be able to handle that. I know what's up with this, so I'll keep and use these wires because they're pre-cut. One end is pre-tinned, you see. And they're the same length. So those 6 wires will be used to, all 6 of them, So that's ready to go. Let's see, RC receiver, video transmitter, compass, GPS compass. You do use a compass on this. The ESC wiring, oh yeah. And I put the connector on the camera, and its wiring is ready to go. I haven't decided. I know I'm going to use 3 of those, ground, voltage, and video, but there's a couple more there. This is capable of being controlled with a UART. So I'll look and see what spares and etc. I have. So there's everything sort of staged up. That has to have some pre-wiring. That cable harness has to have some pre-assembly. Other than that, this is ready to solder on. That's ready to solder on. And the camera's ready to solder on. I think we're kind of ready to go. Again, we're waiting on motors, but I'm going to continue with my ESC cable I'm putting together and looking at the wires from the camera, if I'm going to use all of them or not. Okay, for starters on this cable, I don't need the second ground in, so I'm going to lift that second ground and pull the wire out. I'm going to have to move out of the view of the camera to do that. I'm going to have to do it in a different way. Okay, I pulled that out off camera and just destroyed the locking tab. And it's really hard to get these up. Maybe I should use an X-Acto knife. But what comes out is this. And the reason I took this out is so that you see how it's kind of got a hook in it that locking tab goes under. The thing comes out and kind of turns like that. So I'd know how these push in. I've not played with these connectors that much like I have DuPont connectors doing this. So you see this side comes pre-made, and they send several of these connectors with it so that you can just push them in. So I had to figure out which way to push them in. And let me figure out where that ground goes in that connector real quick. I'm sorry, I ended up making up that cable off camera completely. Why? Because it was so hard for me. I had never worked with these kind of connectors before. And they're kind of like DuPont. They have a little plastic thing that captures the cable. But I screwed up the first one so badly with the tweezers. I had to find something else and start over. Luckily, I had enough to start over because I was putting the connectors in upside down. Once I rotated them 180 degrees, they clicked right in. So there's the cable, 10 pins on the ESC side. The red one is using the 10 volts at 2 amps. And 8 pins on the flight controller side. There's a ground and another voltage we're not using unless I move this voltage around in this side, as we have been discussing. So there's the cable to go between the ESC and the flight controller. And of course I wired it according to this diagram I showed you. There it is, test fitted. So the wires come out of the ESC. I've got a kind of running in there, and they kind of make a loop over there and then come up and into here. So that's the way that needs to be. And then also my little piece of foam is in there. So that's got the ESC connected to the flight controller. We're still waiting on motors. And if we plug in the battery, we have lights on the flight controller. So at minimum, the ground and the supply voltage is correct, and that voltage is enough for that flight controller. I will hook it to the bench power supply here in the future to find out exactly what it's pulling, and as we've discussed. So there's the little cup for the ESC portion of this build with the little grommets, gummies, is that what you call gummies, in it to be put back after all the soldering's done. Not much else needs to be done on that. You notice how I've got every little subcomponent in a little separate container so I can keep track of it all. So I guess I can start soldering the wires on the Crossfire Nano while I'm waiting. VTX is ready, GPS wires are ready, camera wires are ready, receiver wires need work. Okay, let's keep busy work. Not really keep busy. It's work to be done while we're waiting on Amazon to arrive with motors. So I'll solder this bad boy up. Houston, I think we have a problem. This wiring scheme for that harness between the ESC and the flight controller, don't think I should have gone S1 to E1 and S2 to E2, because what's going on here, if you look at the bottom of this flight controller, nope, it's not on the bottom. Just a second. There they are. They were hiding on me. Right there it says 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's, I'm sure, the E1, 2, 3, 4 down the side of that for the ESC side of this wiring diagram. Now this is the bottom of it, so we're going to have to flip it over. So now with it flipped over, yep, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that is not the way Ardocopter wants the motor order. So I think this could be incorrect. I'm going to put it right up here, sideways, because this is the way the ESC again is numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, Ardu wants the motor order to be right front, left rear, left front, right rear. So rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, it wants it 1, 2, 3, 4. iNav wants it a different way. This is for beta flight. This is directly, exactly for beta flight. I think if I did this, it would work perfectly in beta flight from the get-go. I'm not sure. I've looked online at this ESC trying to figure out how to program it and stuff. If you can move the motor order around, I know you can change the motor direction on ESCs, but on a 4-in-1 ESC, can you move the motor around after the fact? I assume you can, based on the fact that they're just going to solder 3 wires from each motor. Then you sort of have to be able to. But if you can't do it in the software, then you're going to have to do what I'm talking about right now, where motor 1 for Ardu is the right front. It calls that motor 2 on the ESC. So I think what I need here is my S1 on the flight controller actually needs to be going to E2 instead of S1. And then 2, the second motor, which would be S2 here, is on 3. So S2 here would need to go to E3, in my opinion. Third motor up here is S3. S3, I think, needs to go to S4 right here. And then S4 needs to go where motor 1 is on the ESC, which is S4 goes to 1. And then I think the motors are just going to spin from the get-go without doing any software. I found BL Heli sweet, and I've looked at it and stuff, but I've really not seen how to do much with that yet. And I've looked up several videos. So I think I actually need to reorder these wires. So I'm going to reorder these wires so that one, instead of going to the right rear motor, is going to go to the front right motor. Just like I told you. Thoughts on that, guys? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? I think that'll work no matter what I'm supposed to be doing. I think it'll work. If I set the flight controllers 1 through 4 output the way this piece of paper is, I think I'll be fine. So I'm going to go back and change the wiring around. We'll know when I power up the thing for the first time and see which motor goes which. So this is the corrected wiring diagram that will have output 1 of the flight controller technically going to 2, the right front on the ESC. The second output will be going to the left rear. The third output of the flight controller will be going to the left front, which it calls 4. And the fourth output will be going to E1. I think that will get me from the get-go what I really do want. And I do believe that this wiring diagram would have worked. And just have to dig deeper in the software on the ESC to figure out how to change the motor order around. So I'm going to go ahead and change it over for this. Go with this. And we'll find out if I made a mistake or lucked out later. This cable is now rewired such that the servo 1 output of this flight controller goes to the right front motor, which is 2, to this flight ESC. 2 on the flight controller goes to the left rear. 3 on the flight controller goes to the left front, and 4 on the flight controller goes to the right rear. This one right here. I hope that works. I feel sure there's a way to change the motor order around in the ESC software. I just haven't got to that part yet. I haven't found that information. I've been looking for it. B Heli Suite 32 is what I've been looking at. The parts just arrived. This is the 1250 kV, and this is the 1300 kV. And if you look at them, these are just a little taller. In other words, I think the windings and stuff in there are just a little taller than these. So these are definitely going to have more torque. Plus I like the color. I like this color rather than the red. So I'm going to keep the 1250s. And the motors themselves look good. I just don't like the way they look with the red TPU on the bottom, but such be life. So let's start soldering up that ESC to the motors. Okay, we've got our work area masked off so splatter don't get anywhere. I've cut the first 3 wires to the length I want them to be. Now I'm going to tin them and solder them down. 3, 6, 9, 12. That's it. We're done. All right. Now I have to get those grommets back on it. Well, I ran the 4 center screws down just like I said I would to get them out of the way so I can get these grommets on this ESC, and then we'll run those screws back up, put our spacers and stuff on, and put our flight controller on and button that up forever, I hope. Now the little washer goes on. It's plastic washer. Goes on all of them. Oops. And then this little nylon spacer goes on top of the washer. And now the flight controller goes on. There it is with the stack ESC and flight controller secured. The nuts on top are plastic too, and they are just even with the top. They go down a little more, but I backed them off even with the top so that there's not a lot of tension on them, but they're snug. In the middle in there, you can see, you can't see all the way through because I got that piece of foam in there on the barometer. That connector right there doesn't come down and touch. One in the back doesn't touch. So it's all good. That wire wraps around in there and then comes out the front. That's the way I put the flight controller on. I guess that's right side up, though the components are down. I would have rather done it the other way, but whatever. And now we have 2 empty containers here. One had the parts for the flight controller in it. One had the parts for the ESC in it. We'll stack them up and store them away. And I guess it's time to start putting some more components on this. There's the TBS Unify Pro. Hey, I even named it correctly that time. Double-sided taped to the bottom plate and then tie wrap put around it to make sure it's secure. It's connected to the SMA connector. I think maybe that wire should have gone through right where my finger's gone through, but there's no way I can do anything about that now. So now I've got the 4 wires from the TBS Unify Pro to solder down up here. Okay, we emptied the GPS container. Put that over there with the rest of them for use later. And now the GPS wires are on the GPS coming up through here and right here. They have to go on back here. These are the 4 for the VTX. They have to go on up here. These are the camera wires. They have to go on up here. And then the RC receiver's left and it has to go on back here. So I think I'm going to solder on the connectors that go back here first, and the ones that go up here from the camera second, and then we'll do the Unify Pro last because it'll come over the top and solder to some of these up here. So I've got to get the receiver ready. It's getting there, boys and girls. And there's the Crossfire Nano RX Pro right there, hooked to the antenna and ready to be soldered in itself and then positioned. That's it. A lot of soldering to do. The container for the RC receiver was emptied, put over here. All the containers are over here now. All that's soldered up, including the camera, of course. That's it. We'll be over to this container, which this is just the top plate, the camera with the new mount that I got today, and the screws for the top plate. That is it. And the battery straps. That is all. Everything's technically right there right now. Whoa. Well, I sure don't want to be no party pooper, but I'll just tell you, that's enough for one day. Plus creating and editing and rendering and publishing 2 videos. So I'm going to take off on this again tomorrow, soldering all this stuff up and put the top plate on and start configuring software. Thank you guys.